had since May 29th, you are counting nearly 2 months, refused to hear these bail applications. And I think it took the intervention of his other colleagues, including his supervisor. We didn't know that by going to court, we were just going to witness a ceremony. Until at 4 today, when he said that according to his mathematics, Dr. Besigye has stayed in prison for only 163 days. He does not count the time Dr. Besigye was remanded by the same government on November 20th, 2024. I don't know whether it is mathematics that has failed him or the law. But his conduct before coming to hear this case this week was telling of who Baguma is. And that's the tragedy of Uganda, that you have a court to which millions and billions of public taxpayers' money is spent for them to arbitrate matters of this nature. And all they are doing is just pocketing our money and going home and driving a new car and wait for Chiwanu Kachiriwa to wait them judgments. You keep asking yourself whether it makes any sense to return to these courts. Because initially we had Seka, now we had Kavuma. We thought that chapter has now been closed. Singiza, now you have Baguma worse than Singiza. And he kept smiling in court to suggest that he was in charge of what he was doing. That same judge told us, you will come here, you the sureties, and the court will give an order, you sign the documents. That's what he said before closing this matter. Now he has locked himself in his chambers. I think Chiwanu Kachiriwa was the one who was dictating. And he has said he can't even hear the application because according to him, Dr. Besigye has stayed in prison for only 163 days. Ridiculous. So I think the country needs to begin profiling these people, sharing their photos, all of you Ugandans. Because today is Dr. Besigye and Ajobe, tomorrow you're going to appear before the same people. We must now, all of us collectively, take action against the judiciary and particular judicial officers who pocket our money and deliver no justice. Because they do this work on behalf of the public, but they behave and conduct themselves as if they are doing anyone a favor. Baguma, you take our money monthly. You drive our car, you sit in our office. And all that you are doing is to continue. Because if you want to serve Museveni, go and become a staff at State House. Then nobody will blame you because that will be a choice that you took. But you pretend to put on gowns and then shout at people, come to court, pretend as if you are in a court when actually you are not in a court. But you are just an extension of Museveni's family.
Yeah, the country now needs to understand that before you go to appear before a judge, you need to know where they come from. And you'll be pleased to know that Baguma is from Ntungamo, Singiza or Singida is from Chisoro. And so that gives you an indication of what their judgment will be. It is very tragic for us as a country that we should have wigged fellows sitting on our desks, taking our time, and doing plenty of nothing. We as a party wish just to sound a warning to them that business as usual is done. Now that there is no rule of law, there is rule by law, we are going to advise ourselves on the next course of action. We had hoped against hope that our leader, Dr. Kizza Besigye, would have the honor of sending off his friend, James Garuga Musinguzi. That will happen on Monday. But that will not happen now. And so the living and the dead find themselves in the same boat under the governance of a judiciary that does not fit the bill in the 21st century. Displeasure is not enough to say how we feel and what we think, but as I've already indicated, I think we have ended this phase and we'll go into the next phase. Thank you.
Well, it's a decision. We are appalled by the decision made by Justice Emmanuel Baguma, because it's not in consonance with the dictates of the Constitution. Actually, it would appear he has overthrown the letter and the spirit of Article 23 of the Constitution, which is very, very clear and categorical. If you read correctly the provisions of Article 23, Clause 6, if one spends 180 days in custody, on remand, that person is entitled to mandatory bail. Now, Justice Baguma is attempting now to rewrite that particular provision to infuse some extraneous thinking or spirit within that particular provision, which is an absurdity. Why? Even if you gave it literal interpretation, it's clear, any man can understand it. Capital offenses, triable by High Court only, 180 days. So you ask yourself, how many days has Dr. Besigye spent on remand? Or both Dr. Besigye and Obey, how many days have they spent on remand? You don't need rocket science. You don't need to be a mathematician to calculate this. You don't need to. You don't even need to be mechanical the way he has done it. Because Ruzira is a remand prison. And it is not in dispute that Dr. Besigye and Obedi Lutale have been in Ruzira maximum prison since the 20th of November 2024. It's not in dispute. And Ruzira is not a police, it's not a police station, it's not a police post, it's not a safe house. So in effect, actually, is suggesting that the period spent in Ruzira by Dr. Besigye from 20th of November 2024 to 21st February 2025, when they were transferred to Nakawa Court, that period that they were under illegal incarceration in a safe house, that Ruzira was a safe house. Yet there was a remand warrant given by a court by that time, which had been recognized under the law. That was the General Court Martial. It's not until the 31st of January, when the Supreme Court pronounced itself on this matter, that they became an illegal court, a kangaroo court. Because previously, they had been recognized under the UPDF Act, and they could issue valid warrants or remand warrants to remand prisons. And it was on that basis that Dr. Besigye and Obedi Lutale were remanded in Ruzira on a valid warrant issued by the General Court Martial. And this ought to have been put into consideration. I wish he was generous enough, and rather he was honest enough. I wish Emmanuel was courteous enough to tell us what actually Dr. Besigye and Obedi Lutale were doing in Ruzira during that period, and how were they, treated under the law. In other words, let me put it differently. I wish we were told their status around that time. Were they inmates on remand? Were they just lodgers? Because there are those people they call lodgers. You are there with no status at all. You can be a lodger in a remand prison. So, This is an absurdity, a travesty of justice, an attempt to overthrow the constitution, and we take exception to that. That's the reason we are saying we are really appalled, because it doesn't require rocket science for one to understand that actually Dr. Besigye and Lutale have been on remand since the 20th of November last year, 2024. And as we speak today, they have spent 264 days on remand. No, 65 days, 265 days on remand. So you ask yourself, Mr. Baguma, and the authorities that we cited, well, we tried to distinguish the Besigye case. Look at Besigye case. It was very, very instructive to him. It was decided by his brother judge, Justice Muwata. And the facts are almost the same, only that Besigye had not been transferred to the civilian courts. But Besigye had been in a civil court before in Uganda. The charges had been were withdrawn 2019, reinstated in 2021, and by the time the Kabazuguruka decision was made on January 31st, 2024, this gentleman Besigye had spent 1,500 days on remand under those different charges. The charge in Rwanda, the charge before the General Court Martial. So in computing the time on remand, Justice Muwata said, no, all has to be put into consideration. The time of the first charge, when he was still before the court in Rwanda, and also the second one, when he was before the General Court Martial, coming up to a total of 1,500. 1,500 days. And on that ground, on that premise, Justice Muwata released Besigye on bail, on mandatory bail, and said he had spent more than the threshold of 180 days. Now here we are. You disregard, flagrantly disregard that authority, which is very, very recent. So what a travesty. Because now there is a contradiction. We have a very huge contradiction. 2, 3 authorities speaking to different situations. I mean, speaking to the same situation, but taking different directions. That's an absurdity. So going forward, there is a matter which he fixed, discretion, the application, the second application. No. You recall, this is now the second bail application they are dismissing. The first one was before Justice Comfort Kanya. She also gave outrageous reasons. Now we have another one fixed for mention, which is also coming up before Emmanuel Baguma. We are going to discuss this matter with Dr. Besigye and Lutale and internally ourselves, and see if we can ask him to recuse himself from this. Because we are convinced we can't get justice from his court. So we are going to consider if we are going to ask another judge to hear it. Just like we first appeared before Kanya Comfort, and we could not go back before the same judge. Now this one who is already prejudiced, who is already biased, we can't appear before him again. Though he fixed it for mention, we are going to have this considered and see if we can move the administration of court to have this matter reallocated to another judge. So we shall keep moving. We are not going to give up. We shall keep filing applications. We shall keep appearing before them until we get justice for Dr. Besigye and Lutale. We're not going to recoil from this. We're not going to tire from the past, from the quest for justice. So we are going to continue with this. Thank you.